Booster shot. Mission accomplished. And it is. It is time to stop coddling them, the ones who won't get the damn shot already. And our first step, you and I, is symbols, the language we use. We call these people vaccine hesitant, vaccine skeptics, anti-vax. We say they're protesting mandates and passports. They're making a personal choice. They're waiting for more information. They're making a medical decision. Bullshit! They're afraid. They're afraid to get vaccinated.
As if we needed further confirmation that Keith Olbermann, KTB! It's not like we needed further confirmation that Keith Olbermann is out of his mind. If Pooh had one person in his life that actually cared about him, he would probably be institutionalized. We talk about a lot of maniacs here on the channel. We talk about a lot of radicals, but for the most part, I don't think they're insane. Maybe they're misguided, indoctrinated. People like Jazz Crockett, for example, or AOC LGBT, Zorro Mamdani. I don't agree with them politically or ideologically, but they're not out of their minds. Jazz Crockett might be a grade A doofus, but when I'm crossing paths with Jazz Crockett on the street, I'm not worried about her having a spontaneous outburst. I'm not worried about Jazz walking past the oranges in the grocery store and having a dangerous overreaction. But Keithy Pooh? 2 months ago, Sage Steele, a former colleague of Keith Olbermann at the worldwide leader in woke, ESPN, 2 months ago, Sage Steele told the New York Post that she was concerned about Keith Olbermann. When we were at ESPN, we thought for many years that Keith was losing his mind. Here we are years later, and he's never been able to find it. The consistent behavior that we see from Keith Olbermann, the constant outburst on social media, the threats to people like the American hero Scott Jennings, I am a real American. The emotional meltdowns, the allergic reactions caused by uncontrollable symptoms of stage 4 OMB. Orangeman bad! Keith Olbermann has the most severe case of OMB I have ever seen. This irrational behavior, this unacceptable behavior, it's not behavior that we expect from a dude that is pushing 70. Keith Olbermann will be 67 years old in January. Most of us men, we tend to mellow as we age. When we're teenagers, when we're in our 20s, we're full of raging testosterone, or as the mainstream media prefers to call it, toxic masculinity. In our 30s and 40s, we are focused on establishing our careers, focused on making money, supporting our families. By the time we're in our late 60s, especially for someone as accomplished as Keith Olbermann, we've mellowed out. We're not as angry as we were in our 20s. And most of us are damn sure not wasting our time chasing women in their 20s. Most dudes pushing 70, they're not chasing after women who are young enough to be their granddaughters. And they're damn sure not desperate enough to pay them tens of thousands of dollars for their company. Unfortunately, Keith Olbermann is a 66-year-old man who acts like he's 16 years old. And yesterday, Keithy Pooh was exposed as an alleged sugar daddy. He was allegedly paying a young woman for her companionship. And when the young woman inevitably broke things off, Keithy Pooh had a very hard time letting go. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the second channel in the description below. Earlier today on the second channel, talked about Draymond Green getting into an altercation with a fan in New Orleans on Sunday. The fan was comparing Draymond Green to Angel Reese. Naturally, A four-time NBA champion was highly offended to be compared to a pretend basketball player. But what's being overlooked in this story is Draymond Green's comments about the current state of this flaming ass fire known as the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans are an absolute embarrassment to the NBA, and I explain why New Orleans is at serious risk of losing this team. So if you haven't already, click the link in the description below, subscribe to the second channel. Headline at Mediaite. Alleged sugar daddy Keith responds after article claims he spent $15,000 on jewelry for Olivia Nuzzi. Last night, Ryan Lizza, an ex-boyfriend of Olivia Nuzzi, he published an article where he accused his former girlfriend of having an affair with South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford. At 51 years old, most people would think Ryan Lizza is too old to be dating Olivia Nuzzi, but their 19-year age difference, it pales in comparison to the men Olivia Nuzzi normally prefers to date. For instance, Mark Sanford is 65 years old. She is alleged to have been involved with Robert Kennedy Jr., who is 71 years old. Clearly, Olivia Nuzzi likes her men to be mature. Clearly, Olivia Nuzzi is not an ageist. Now, in the vast majority of cases, not all, but in the overwhelming majority of cases, when a young woman in her 20s or early 30s is dating a man who never misses his daily dose of Metamucil, there is one reason and one reason only for the young woman's interest in the man with the wrinkled wanker: money. I'll let you decide for yourself whether this alleged relationship between Keith Olbermann and Olivia Nuzzi was true love or quid pro quo. Buried in Ryan Lizza's article about Mark Sanford were several paragraphs detailing Olivia Nuzzi's alleged relationship with Keithy Poo. According to Ryan, for a period of time, Pooh was Olivia's sugar daddy. He paid for her college tuition. He bought her designer clothing and purses. He also let Olivia borrow his favorite purse. He spent $15,000 on Cartier jewelry. He paid her rent. He furnished her apartment in the West Village, and he also let her spend time in his own apartment. Apparently, when she was in college, I guess Olivia Nuzzi was struggling financially, so she decided to find a simp. She decided to find a desperate loser who would be lonely enough to subsidize her lifestyle in exchange for companionship. Perhaps one night, Olivia was scrolling through Twitter, and she came across the musings of a deranged lunatic named Keith Olbermann. Who in the hell knows what Keithy was complaining about on this particular evening? Maybe New York City was in the midst of a heat wave, and Keithy was blaming the hot farts from his cat's ass for warming the climate. At one point, Keith received a notification for a private message. Now, normally, these private messages are coming from bots in Pakistan trying to convince Keithy to donate money to save the princess. But this particular DM came from a real-life princess, Olivia Nuzzi. They began exchanging messages. They allegedly entered a relationship. But eventually, Olivia Nuzzi wanted to end their time together. I would imagine that Olivia Nuzzi eventually realized that Keith Olbermann was insane. But there was just one problem, one tiny problem. According to Ryan Lizza, Keith Olbermann was not ready to let go. They supposedly, Ryan and Olivia, they supposedly devised a battle plan to help Olivia escape from Keith Olbermann. According to Ryan Lizza, Olivia Nuzzi believed that Keith Olbermann was stalking her, and they implemented a strict policy of never engaging with him. Now, whether or not the stalking allegation is true, I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't think Keith Olbermann was hiding in the bushes or standing on a rooftop with binoculars looking through her window. I assume they're probably talking about cyber stalking. And in fairness to Keith Olbermann, I don't know if Olivia Nuzzi is exactly trustworthy. I mean, she does seem to have a pattern of relationship with old dudes that don't exactly end well. So in his defense, some of the allegations against Keith Olbermann might not be true, but I would not be surprised if Keith Olbermann was essentially paying Olivia Nuzzi to be his girlfriend. I mean, this dude, I have been telling you guys for years, Keith Olbermann exhibits all of the symptoms of chronic loneliness: uncontrollable outbursts, emotional meltdowns, constant anger, allegedly paying a young woman who is young enough to be his daughter to pretend to be his girlfriend. Unfortunately, as long as there are men only a mother could love with a little bit of money, there will be women who take advantage of them. And they don't have to be Captain Insano like Keith Olbermann. I remember when I was in college, there was this dork in one of my classes who was a real pain in the ass. He was the epitome of that guy. I'm sure you've come across that guy before. That guy who's always begging to be the center of attention. That guy who brags about how many fights he's been in or how many women he's paid to sleep with him. Naturally, even a young Uncle KC avoided that guy. But I would see him around campus, and he would always be with a pretty girl. This dude looked like an elephant. If I was a girl, I'd be afraid to kiss him because I wouldn't want to develop warts. But to his credit, he was always hanging out with a pretty girl. Initially, I thought maybe he had game, maybe he had charisma, but eventually, I found out that his dad was a high-profile businessman in the city, which means the only thing the elephant had besides a natural appetite for grass was daddy's money. As long as there are lonely, desperate dudes, there will be women who have no problem taking advantage of them. But I don't feel sorry for Keith Olbermann. I know this has to be embarrassing for him. It's got to be humiliating to be exposed paying for a girlfriend. But the way he acts, the way he behaves, Keith Olbermann, he deserves to be embarrassed. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys tomorrow.